The content you're about to enjoy comes from the archives of The Best You. We're devoted to the very best in personal development, with a platform and resources dedicated to inspiring and changing people's lives. At The Best You, we work with the world's leading writers and trainers on the evolution of the self, and people whose journeys have been affected by their work and words. These Best You Expo talks are recorded in front of a live audience in a live event. We highly recommend that you focus on the message. As they say, what you focus on expands. Enjoy. Andrew Salisbury. The title of his talk is "The Fastest Change for Your Health is Drink Better Coffee." Join coffee and health expert Andrew Salisbury as he discusses the latest scientific findings about the benefits of coffee. Research reveals not all coffee is equally good for you, and I am a great believer in that. Learn what antioxidant properties to look for and what nasty stuff to avoid. Thanks to Salisbury's expert knowledge, you will learn a lot of very interesting and important things related to coffee. Thank you so much.
So we're really excited to have you guys here today. We're going to talk about something that's very near and dear to our heart, and that is coffee. My name is Amber Salisbury, and this is my husband, Andrew.
Hello.
And before we talk to you guys about coffee and everything that we want to share in this brief time that we have, I want to tell you a little bit about who he is as a man. Is that okay with you guys? Yes. He hates this part, by the way, because the first thing I'll share with you is he's British. He's British and is dying right now because he doesn't like to talk about himself, right? But I think what's important to share, honey, is a little bit about who you are, because it links into purity and what you've developed in the last 3 years. Mm-hmm. So he's British. He's a tea drinker. He drank tea up until 3 years ago. That's another thing to share with you guys about him. And he used to give me grief about coffee. I got a lot of coffee shame because Andrew Salisbury didn't want me to drink that much coffee. He's like, "Babe, I think you're drinking too much." Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah. I got a lot of coffee shame. That's what we call it in our house, coffee shame. And the other thing to share with you about Andrew is at 19 years old, he left the UK. He hitchhiked from New York to California. And by 21, he started his own company in the telecom industry and worked on that for the next 25 years. During that time, he's still drinking tea, always drinking tea. And when he decided to sell that company, he thought he'd made his mark on the world. He thought he'd done what he was supposed to do. And he was finished. He was like, "Babe, we're moving. We're going to get a place on the beach and we're going to retire." And then coffee found him. You found coffee. It happened.
One or the other.
It happened.
Yeah.
Is there anything else to share about you that's important?
No, I think that's it. That's great.
He's like, "No, please don't
Move
share." One thing to share with you guys that's really important is he does hold the Guinness Book of World Record for bungee jumping. And
Which is not relevant to coffee in any way.
Yeah, or anything that we're talking about, except for the fact that it does speak to your adventure side. And he's a risk taker. And I will stop talking now. You want me to stop talking about this now? So you can start talking about coffee?
It's very sweet.
All right.
Okay, well, welcome. The first thing I wanted to say, I'm the bearer of good news here, which is coffee is incredibly good for you. But there's something interesting about it. It can actually be made better with a little bit of attention to conscious sourcing and roasting of coffee and the delivery of the coffee. So how do I know this? About 3 years ago, Amber started having some health issues. It was very low energy, difficult to get out of bed in the morning, and just really a hard time. And we went to doctors and we did all the sort of normal stuff that you would do to try and find out what it could be, what could be affecting her health. 6 to 8 cups of. I don't think I actually need this. I'll talk normally if it's 6 to 8 cups of coffee a day. And we had more than a few arguments about whether she was putting one foot on the accelerator and one foot on the brake, because I felt like what she was doing wasn't healthy for her. So, you were pretty resistant to give up your coffee, right?
I was not going to give up my coffee. Yeah. I was working at the time. I was having to create a lot of content. I was up late at night, and I was like, I cannot do that, babe. I can't give up my coffee.
And out of interest, is there anyone in the audience who's ever felt guilty about drinking coffee or the amount of coffee that they've drunk? Right. So, yeah.
Anyone had someone in their house shame them about the coffee that they were drinking?
So that's exactly the stage that I was at, and I started to research the health benefits of coffee. And what was surprising for me about 3 years ago is there's a lot of mixed information about coffee. Some people who were very credible were telling you how to give up coffee, how to reduce the amount of coffee you were drinking. And other people were saying it's the number one source of antioxidants, it's very good for you, and it was really a mixed bag of information. So luckily, through a friend of mine, John Butcher, he introduced me to two professors at Vanderbilt University, the Institute of Coffee Studies. So I decided I would take these guys out to dinner, these two professors out to dinner, and find out once and for all if coffee was good for you or bad for you, probably win an argument at the same time. So I took them out to dinner, and what they told me blew me away, which is that coffee is incredibly good for you, and that there's a gap between what the scientists know and what the general public knows about the health benefits of coffee. The first point was that coffee was the number one source of antioxidants in the American diet. So kale, blueberries, red wine, all these other things we think are very high in antioxidants, nothing beats coffee. And it's not just the amount of coffee we consume, it's the fact that it's incredibly high in antioxidants. The knock-on effect of coffee being so high in antioxidants is that it has profound benefits to different parts of the body. The first part of the body, this is huge, is that people who consume 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day have between a 40 and 45% lower chance of ever developing type 2 diabetes.
40 to 45% chance. That's incredible.
And that's pretty amazing. And so when I first heard that, there was one of two things that happened. I either said, okay, this is rubbish. It's either not true, in which case 19,000 studies that have been done on coffee and health are just not valid, or this is information that has to get out. One study of 1,109,000 people done over 30 years, which is called the Nurses Study, showed that 3 to 5 cups of coffee has a 45% lower chance of type 2 diabetes. We've got 25 million people in the US who are diabetic, but we've got 81 million people who are pre-diabetic. So it's pretty amazing information. Second thing is
millions of people.
Yeah.
Can I talk about the liver?
Talk about the liver.
So one decision we made when we were creating the team for Purity is we wanted to make sure that we had people on board that were like-minded in our vision. When we discovered all that we discovered about coffee, we thought, honestly, Andrew made Purity coffee for me so I would have a healthy coffee to drink. And but when we decided people have to hear about this. This is really incredible information and can help millions of people. We decided to put together a team. We wanted the very best in every category. We wanted the very best. And when it came to liver, the best person was Sanjeev Chopra, Dr. Sanjeev Chopra. He's one of the most beautiful humans you've ever met. He is the last dean of Harvard Medicine. He's Deepak's brother, if you guys know Deepak. And what's beautiful about him is his entire life has been dedicated to the liver. And if you drink coffee, if you have a liver, you should be drinking coffee.
If you're interested in speaking, exhibiting, or getting involved in the largest personal development expos in the world, contact us today at www.thebestyouexpo.com or send us an email to info@thebestyou.co.
If you drink and have a liver, you should definitely be drinking coffee.
And you have a liver, you should definitely be drinking coffee, because if you drink just 2 cups past the baseline, which is, say you drink 1 cup of coffee a day, if you drink 3 cups of coffee a day, you have what is the percentage?
20% lower chance.
20% lower chance of getting liver cirrhosis, fatty liver disease, and liver cancer. So one thing that is really crucial to share with the people that you love is if they're drinking or if they're walking around with a liver, they should be having more coffee, more cleaner coffee, pure coffee in their diet. What else about the liver do you want to share?
I think that's the main point.
The other thing, this is a great book by Sanjeev, and it's the 5 simple things you can do to extend your life and your longevity. The first thing that he talks about is coffee. This is a great book for anybody who wants to just learn a little bit more. What else is on there? Meditation, exercising. I mean,
nuts, vitamin
nuts,
D.
vitamin D.
Yeah.
Vitamin. I just used your British accent.
Perfect. And so there's a number of other things. So the high antioxidants, great for prevention of type 2 diabetes, phenomenal for the liver. High antioxidants also have been shown to reduce heart failure, heart disease, and specifically some of the studies around coffee and heart disease. But there's a number of other health benefits from drinking coffee. Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, 5 different sorts of cancers. So for me, there was an aha moment. I was actually amazed that if this was really true, there wasn't a brand of coffee that was available for people who are health conscious. Because my next question was, what coffee do I buy, Amber? What's the focus of the coffee that I should get? What's the healthiest coffee on the market? So nobody knew. The professors didn't know. I talked to a number of people, but they introduced me to Dr. Adriana Ferrar, who's one of the leading coffee scientists in the world from the University of Brazil in Rio de Janeiro. And she consults with the World Health Organization, one of the top people in coffee. And the first thing I did is I reaffirmed with her, if coffee is coffee that good for you? She said yes. Second thing is, what makes it so good for you? And what made it so good for you was the level of antioxidants in the coffee. The third part to this question that sort of set us on this journey with Purity Coffee is, okay, if it's the antioxidants, what can we do to improve the level of antioxidants in coffee? And could we actually make a difference? So she thought it was possible. We didn't know. She was the expert, and we worked with her for 18 months. And we looked at every step of the production process from the coffee cherry all the way to the cup to see what difference made a difference. What could we actually do to affect the health benefits of coffee? And so would you like to know some of those things that it should actually matter to you when you're selecting your coffee and not just what we do as Purity?
Yes.
Yep, perfect. Thank you all of you.
You guys are a good audience.
That's right. The very first thing is this. The level of antioxidants differ in the green bean from harvest to harvest, region to region, plantation to plantation, crop to crop, based on sun and rain and all these other conditions. So you can't actually tell which coffee is going to be highest in antioxidants in any one season. So our very first step, making every decision based on health, is we had to lab test 40 organic coffees and pick the one that was highest in antioxidants. So the first one is pick the right raw quality coffee bean. Second is your coffee needs to be organic. The reason it has to be organic, if you care about coffee and health, is coffee is the most heavily treated crop on the planet. Next to tobacco and cotton, nothing is treated more than coffee. And the problem is it's treated in countries that don't have the same oversight and regulations that you do in the US. So that's a big problem because there's a gap. When you spray your crop in Brazil and you import the coffee to the US, there are no standards to say what sort of pesticides you've put on that coffee in Brazil. So there's no sort of checks and balances. So if you don't go with organic coffee, you really just don't have any knowledge about the quality of the coffee. Third thing, the coffee needs to be specialty grade. Does anyone know what specialty grade coffee is?
We didn't until 3 years ago.
So specialty grade coffee is a bit of a catch-all for us, and it deals with a lot of different issues. Specialty grade is the single highest grade of coffee. There's no higher grade of coffee. There's a lot of names out there like gourmet and that sort of thing, but the highest grade of coffee that you can buy is specialty grade coffee, and not all organic coffee is specialty grade coffee. In fact, only 1% of the coffee in the world is specialty grade organic coffee. The reason why you need specialty grade is because there's a thing in coffee called defects. Defects are things like insect damage, foreign matter, mold, mycotoxins. There's chipped beans, there's broken beans, there's black beans, which show
Trash that can fall into the beans.
And specialty coffee doesn't allow any of that in the coffee. So the next thing you have to check is your coffee needs to be specialty grade coffee. The last thing is roasting, and this is probably the most complex part, so I'm not going to go into a ton of details on this, but the way you roast the coffee changes the amount of antioxidants that is available in the coffee at the end. So as you roast coffee, the antioxidants drop off dramatically. So if you have dark roasted coffee, you're getting very low levels of antioxidants. And unfortunately, the pattern, particularly in the US, is very dark roasted coffee. And the reason for that is they want the coffee that you drink in Singapore to taste the same as the coffee you drink in Seattle. The very best way to achieve that is to over roast the coffee, so you're tasting a sort of burnt coffee. Burnt coffee tastes the same worldwide, and that's the way they can deal with the defects and the poor quality coffee.
Having promoted more than 600 speakers and more than 65,000 people attend my seminars and courses and workshops and expos, having read so many books and attended so many courses, I really realized that the basics of personal, professional growth is based on the power of the question. Asking yourself empowering questions. Read my new book, The Question, Find Your True Purpose. It's based on my work, 30 years of entrepreneurship, all the experiences that I have, my manifesto, and what's really important. So for more information, go to www.thequestion.co.
What's the last thing?
The last thing is freshness. You want to make sure that your coffee is really fresh. If you're buying coffee from a grocery store, most times it's at least 4 to 6 months, 4 to 6 months old, if not longer. Be sure that you are checking dates and some of the dates are, some of them are 2 years out. Just make sure you're looking at that kind of thing if you're going to be buying off the shelf. Anything else with the freshness piece in purchasing?
I'd just say this, it's a funny product. It is a food product, we ingest it, but it's not considered a food product in terms of a lot of regulations. So coffee starts to stale after 15 days. Most people are not aware of that, but the beans on the outside of the coffee turn rancid, or the oils turn rancid. And what happens is the antioxidants drop off in the coffee. So fresh is very important in the coffee, and fresh whole bean coffee rather than ground coffee.
And something else we'll share with you guys that's really important to know. If you're doing coffee at home, make sure you're only grinding enough for whatever you're using in that moment. There's a rule of 15. You can share that in a second. But coffee is like an avocado. The moment you cut into it, the moment that you grind it, it starts to oxidize and it starts losing antioxidants. Coffee is so rich in antioxidants. You want to keep that number high. You want to do everything in your power to make sure that you're keeping it in that state. Do you want to? Yep. I think the law of 15 is interesting. Do you want to share that?
Yeah, basically the law of 15 talks about freshness. So obviously one thing that's super important for high quality coffee for health is it needs to be fresh. So green coffee beans last around 15 months where they're fresh, but when they're roasted, it's 15 days. So coffee needs to be consumed after around 15 days, and if you grind the coffee, it's 15 minutes because of the whole oxidation. So the last part to this is we needed to find out, did we actually do anything? I mean, we spent 18 months with some of the best scientists in the world trying to figure out if we followed every step based on health, did we actually create any measurable results? So what we did is we lab tested our coffee in 3 independent labs. So we tested it in the University of Brazil in Rio, in the University of Lisbon in Portugal, and Silica in the US for mold and mycotoxins and that sort of thing. So this part is not a commercial for Purity Coffee. The reason I started this company is not to sell coffee. The reason I started this company is I felt there was a huge knowledge gap between what people knew about the health benefits of coffee and what science knows, and that having that information get out to the general public would have a profound difference in overall health. If you think of things like liver health and type 2 diabetes by itself, that's 2 things that affect over 81 million people. So it's as far as we're concerned, a very important issue that we want to get out. The reason I give you that disclaimer is because Purity Coffee, out of 49 of the top coffee brands, was ranked single highest in antioxidants, with an average of 2 times more antioxidants than any other coffee brand, up to 10 times. And so the reason I mention that, again, is not as an advertisement for Purity Coffee, but as a way to understand that what you do in terms of production can dramatically affect the amount of antioxidants in coffee, and that makes a difference.
We're hoping that other coffee companies will follow this trend and start really looking at these things. And that's where you guys can help. As consumers, you can start asking questions about your coffee. You can start asking questions about freshness. And you can start telling the people in your life, drink more coffee, drink clean coffee, pure coffee, but drink more coffee.
And finally, just to finish it off, in case anyone has any questions, Amber's doing much better. 3 years later, she's doing much better, a lot better energy. And I can't honestly say that it was the switch in coffee that made the difference, because we did lots of different things. But what I can say,
Oh, yeah. From acupuncture to chiropractic to chanting to eating only soup.
We shouldn't mention the chanting.
a chanting person on coffee, right?
Yeah. But bottom line, it was the easiest adjustment that she's made to a diet with the most amount of benefit. So the problem we've got in this world is not a lack of information. We know that if we're pre-diabetic, we should avoid sugar, we should avoid alcohol, we should exercise more. These things are all common knowledge. We know we should eat more vegetables. This is common knowledge. The problem is these things are difficult to do. Changing your focus on coffee, paying a little attention to the quality of coffee you drink is one of the smallest adjustments you can make with the largest benefits. So that's it.
How young can you be to start drinking coffee?
Thank you. Thank you, you
Thank
too.
you. You guys are awesome. We love this audience.
Yeah. How young?
How young?
Young.
So Leela, 11 years old, she has a little bit of coffee in the morning with milk. The reason we do that is she's ADD and it calms her down. Very much like a sort of ADHD medicine, it gives her that sort of stability. And I'd
focus.
rather, yeah.
So is it like an ounce? Is it like how
Yeah.
much? Like,
I mean, the best way is let your body, put it this way. If your choice is legalized speed or an organic produce that's going to give you a little jolt with caffeine, I'll take that choice first.
Yeah. We give her just a little cup, about this much. I don't even know what that is, but
2 ounces.
Yeah, 2 ounces.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are a lot of studies that are coming out now on kids and ADD and if coffee can be a help. What else? Alzheimer's is another thing. I lost my father to Alzheimer's. There's so much research on coffee right now. So if that's, if you have parents, or if Andrew always was worried about me getting Alzheimer's. So if the coffee shame in our house has turned to, are you drinking too much coffee, to, have you only had 1 cup of coffee today, honey? I need you to have more. So that's another thing. It's really helpful in that area. What other questions?
The extraction method, when you have, hot coffee versus cold brew, I've noticed kind of a difference in how my body responds to the acidity. And also, is there a difference in the antioxidants and kind of the phytonutrients depending on those methods?
It's new territory right now. There's just been a study in Brazil that shows the antioxidants are slightly lower, but not enough that you would really care that much about it. If your body responds better to cold brew, you should do that because the acidity, the pH, it's better. The one thing you have to care about, though, is your coffee needs to be tested for mold, because you're not pouring hot water over the coffee, which is that final stage that could eradicate some of the mold and yeast in the coffee. Since you're cold brewing it, there's an extra layer of risk if you're having coffee that already has mold, ochratoxin A, or yeast in it. So really super good quality coffee.
Yeah.
Okay,
thank you.
Okay.
Thank you guys so much. We're going to be at the booth. Please come by and get a bag of coffee to take home to you and your family. And thank you again for being here today.
Thank you.
For more information, go to www.thebestyou.co.